video setup, or the setup for all attendees. It's a little different than a Zoom meeting, and just want you to know you're able to chat, which we're kind of reserving that for any side conversation or any technical help needed. Raise your hand means you want to actually physically talk and you want to be heard, you want your voice heard. And question and answer means you want to actually ask a question, in which we'll address during our question and answer period. There will be one right after Nathan and I speak, and then there'll be another one at the end. We may go over a little bit, so, and that's gonna be during the question and answer period and the discussion, and we are willing to stay till 8 o'clock. We understand you guys have things to do, but we will hang out, and it would be great if you guys can join us. So,
hey, Lindsay, real quick,
yeah.
Can you change it to presentation mode so we don't see your prompts?
Yeah, I don't know why I did that. Thank you, though.
No, I think it's just under your share screen. You have to share the...
How is that? There we go.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, so I am going to update you on what all things Friends of the Yampa and things that are going on with our partners in the Yampa River. So I am Friends of the Yampa's program manager, and as in about a week, I will have had this position for a whole year. So it has been a whirlwind, and it has been fun, and I appreciate everyone that's made me feel welcome, and I am amazed at the partners in this valley and outside of it, and all the impact everyone is willing to put forward to improve this river and to spread the word about this awesome river. So thank you, everyone. And one thing that we're really excited for is our memberships, which I hope everyone that's attending can join or has joined. But we have, I guess Friends of the Yampa has been talking about this for 10 years now, and we finally did it. Now that there's a staff person, the first full-time staff person to make it happen. So we are trying to think of a funding mechanism that will sustain us and to keep things going, keep the drive going, and to give back to everyone that's always given to us. So thank you to all of our partners that help with discounts and make this happen. We're currently at 48 members, and we have already reached our budget goals for the year. So the more the merrier. So I'm sure you guys are wondering how impacted we are as an organization concerning coronavirus. And as you know, State of the Yampa, this is how we pivoted. We had to cut the program in half because we know that attention spans are an issue when you don't have it in person. But we had to change our annual Yampa River Awareness Project float that we do with American Rivers. We had to cancel that, and it'll just be picked up next year. We had to cancel our youth river camps. This was supposed to be the first year. We did get grants, but we're going to push it off till next year, which will give us an opportunity to get more scholarship, get more people engaged. We had a partnership with CMC, and they weren't doing any in-person classes, so it kind of had to work out that way. And then, as you know, we turned in the Yampa River Fest into a virtual program, and we're super excited about how many people submitted. We had over 75 submissions, and we hope to continue the tradition of virtual engagement for years to come. So thank you, everyone who participated. It was actually really hard to judge. And we hope maybe next year we can have more of an impact. We were able to add several extra events, and we think those are just as important to the Yampa River. So hopefully next year we get more and continue this tradition. So a lot has happened with partnerships in this valley, and one thing I will say is partnerships are done well here, and I appreciate everyone's willingness to work together and build that respect to get things done. So the Yampa River Fund was super exciting, has launched officially with its first funding cycle in May, and they were able to award over around $200,000 exactly to 5 different projects that include riparian habitat restoration, multi-beneficial projects, and leased water releases for environmental and recreational purposes. So I am a part of the management entity for Yampa River Fund, so I've been helping with this whole process, which has been great. It's one of my programs that I help out with, and it's what also funds part of my position. The Integrated Water Management Plan is also something I'm a part of. It's a planning process under the Basin Roundtable, and I'm in charge of environmental and recreational engagement. And I have engaged with over 25 stakeholder groups to provide input on the Yampa River and the Elk River, and what the environmental and recreational needs are. And that includes project areas or what the general overall needs are. I also engaged with municipalities and counties to see what their planning features are. And there are some exciting things on the horizon. So we look forward to sharing more of that with you. We have also worked with Retree, and we did last year with Hala, get a bunch of volunteers together, and we can hope to continue that to this year. We're in the process of planning that, so volunteers look out. We'll probably plan a socially distanced Retree effort. The Yampa River Leafy Spurge project has had to change a little bit. They've been able to go forward with their program goals, and they had to postpone some of their events or outreach or polling events until next year, but they're still going forward with most of their projects. And currently their goal is to map all leafy spurge from Duffy Mountain to Cross Mountain this year. And all things are going forward with them. They're creating good partnerships, and they have a great engagement with a lot of the ag users along the Yampa River. Please go to their website. They have a great website, and they can show you all what they're up to. We are still planning on a river cleanup this year with the city, as well as the state parks and downriver with parrot heads. We plan on doing it more of a virtual engagement, just sending people where they can go, and then they'll report back to us. We're still getting the details together and the capabilities of all of the different stakeholder groups. So we also are excited that we were able to fund a volunteer engagement position that is engaging in the National Monument. And we're able to set up volunteer trips that will go down the monument and do scientific studies. And a lot of our friends group and followers were volunteers. So I thank everyone that's doing that. Some of their trips were canceled this year due to coronavirus, but as of June 15th, all trips planned are a go. And then I hope everyone can join us with a Yampa Basin Rendezvous. On June 9th from 11 to 12:30, it's our second webinar. And it has a lot of science, but I hope everyone can join because it's very digestible, and it's a great way to find out climate information and science information related to the Yampa River. So we do have things moving forward. We do have future programs, and we are working currently on two separate videos, tubing and river etiquette. We're both trying to teach everyone that visits this valley or our longtime river users here in this valley how to properly tube, how to be polite, how to keep this river healthy, and how to respect private property. That's the same with river etiquette, just more tailored towards the other floating activities. We're really excited to do that. It seemed like there was a need, and we think that this will be great help in teaching everyone about the Yampa and how they can respect it. We're excited too. We are having our first ever Yampa Headwaters fly fishing fundraiser and poker run. We are sending and challenging everyone to go visit our headwaters. No main stems allowed, no big fish, no grip and grin. This is about the experience of our headwaters, the experience of just fishing and getting out and enjoying where it all starts. And we have challenges from everywhere from Elk River headwaters to Yampa headwaters, and it's sure to be great. Patagonia is our sponsor, and it's donation based, so what you can give will be great. And every watershed you get, every watershed you fish, you get a poker card, and you can be in the running for a grand prize. We also are doing, because we're pivoting from youth river camps, we are developing river education videos tailored towards the youth, in which will teach a little bit about river safety and river ecology and hydrology. We have a our National Monument volunteer coordinator is also part of our youth river camps and developing the curriculum. So we want to still keep her job, still fund her, and she's helping out with this process. EcoFlight, we partnered again this year with them, and a video of the watershed, a flyover with Zoom technology, and Kent has provided narration, so it's going to be a little different this year, but we are going to be able to share that soon. It's just about done. Some things we are working on this year is getting trailered parking for boating access. There's been a few changes, policy changes in the city of Steamboat, not allowing hooked up trailer parking. So we're working on that and working with the city. We're also working on better river access near the town of Clark on the Elk River. And we're working with the city of Craig because the plans for Tri-State to shut down, they're now looking a little bit more towards developing their economy through recreation in the Yampa River. So we're really excited to work on that. And hopefully we'll see a whitewater park in Craig soon. And to end, I'd like to show you the comparison of water years for this year and last. So this blue line was last year, which was amazing water year, and the peak didn't happen until right around the beginning of June. So, and whereas this year, it's the orange line, it's occurred way sooner, and it looks like we're splitting the difference between the year of 2016 and the year 2019. So we are definitely going to need the Yampa River Fund this year, especially counting the fact that in 2019, there had to be a release from Stagecoach Reservoir in August because there was a shutdown for a day or two, I believe. So this is what we're looking at coming up. And I thank everyone for coming to State of the Yampa. And I am happy to introduce now Nathan. So Nathan Fay is the current director of the Colorado Office of Outdoor Recreation Industry, a division of the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. He brings over 20 years of experience working with federal and state agencies, national and statewide nonprofits, and local community groups to protect land and water across the Southern Rockies by developing strategies that balance resource conservation with responsible economic growth. Nathan is a sixth-generation Coloradoan with roots in Moffat County. His work and life experiences have foundations in rivers and advocacy. From 2007 to 2019, Nathan served as Southern Rockies Stewardship Director for the National River Stewardship Organization, American Whitewater. This role brought Nathan up to the Yampa Basin many, many, many times, where he helped Friends of the Yampa on multiple occasions during our Yampa River Awareness Project, our River Festival, strategic planning sessions, and some high-level water planning effort we have participated in. Welcome, Nathan. Thank you for coming.
Hi, Lindsay. Thanks so much for that introduction. It sounds to me like you probably have one of the best jobs in the state right now. Congratulations. And I know that the Friends of the Yampa are really lucky to have you. So look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Nathan.
So bear with me. I need to figure out how to share my screen here real quickly. So I might need a little bit of feedback. Just let me know if you can see the slideshow. So Lindsay, is that working?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, thanks. All right, well, thanks for the intro. And I want to just say thank you for inviting me to join this evening. Yampa River is definitely near and dear to my heart for many of the reasons that you just explained. It's a great honor, really, to have an opportunity to come back and meet with you all, participate in the celebration of the Yampa River, and talk briefly about, I guess my assignment here tonight is to talk about my fundamental passion for rivers and the outdoors and how that started in the Yampa Basin and how that path has led to the role that I am currently serving for the state of Colorado. I'm going to pivot a little bit because I like to take these opportunities to listen to questions and challenges and opportunities that the audience is willing to bring forward. And I like to take all of that stuff back to my office so that it informs our strategies for the outdoor recreation industry and for the Office of Economic Development as a whole. Kent asked that I discuss how I got into the outdoor industry, touch on my background as a paddler, as a guide, certainly my time over the last 12 years at American Whitewater and working with Friends of the Yampa and a number of other groups across the state. And I guess more specifically, how rivers connected me to politics and to businesses in Colorado. I'll admit at the outset here, I am really bad at telling my own story. So I mulled this over. I think this is a great opportunity. I had to say yes to Kent and to Lindsay because tonight provides this really great sort of unique opportunity to connect with and honor individuals that have helped foster my connection to the rivers, especially the Yampa, and to reaffirm this strong commitment that I have to this resource and to being an advocate for groups like Friends of the Yampa. Why do I care? I think, Lindsay just touched on this. I have some pretty meaningful family connections to the Yampa River Basin in Moffat County, Routt County in particular. My great-grandfather grew up and ran the train depot for the DNRG out of Craig. And my grandfather was born on the railroad tracks, and he and his brother spent most of their time as kids fishing in the Yampa, admittedly with dynamite and live mice for pike minnow. But I remember between, their histories and the history of my father traveling back and forth from Denver on the railroad to Craig and to Moffat County, our dinner table was always filled with stories about the river and the Yampa River and the Elk River and the Little Snake in particular. And so these are places that are really important to me. And, I love having the opportunity to come back to Moffat County and kind of revisit this family history and to reconnect with the river. And it's more important to me now than I think it has ever been. So before I go into kind of my personal story, I wanted to first provide an overview of the Office of Outdoor Recreation Industry. And then if there's time allowed, we can revisit the path that I took to serving as the director. So my office, the Outdoor Recreation Industry Office, is a division of the Governor's Office of Economic Development and International Trade. And so our other divisions, our sister divisions include the Office of Tourism for the state of Colorado, the Minority Business Office, the Film Office, Colorado Creative Industries Office, Business Support Offices. We are all tasked with encouraging the expansion and retention of Colorado businesses, especially for all of those lifestyle industries. We are responsible for coordinating Colorado's marketing efforts, for providing services to small businesses, small business growth, job retention, technical assistance, research support. I want to make the point very clear that we are not recreation managers. We are an Office of Economic Development. This office, the OREC office, was the second office to be established in the country. Utah beat us by a few years. We were established in 2015, and we serve as the state central coordinator for all things outdoor recreation industry. So it's coordinating policy, resource development, promotion, collaboration with community partners like Friends of the Yampa, and certainly our other government stakeholders. We represent, I guess, let me step back a second. After we launched the Outdoor Rec Office in 2015, Colorado's outdoor rec economy experienced this really significant surge in growth. We went, consumer spending in the outdoor recreation sector jumped $16 billion between 2013 and 2017. Wages and salaries went up $8.6 billion. Taxes to support local infrastructure and local initiatives jumped $4 billion. So before the coronavirus and the shutdown impacted our industry, we were sitting at 10% of our gross domestic product in the state. We employ about 20% of our workforce in Colorado. Collectively, we have an annual economic impact of $62 billion to the state. So as a division of the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, my office drives the advancement of outdoor recreation economy. And we do that through these four primary impact areas: economic development, conservation and stewardship, education and workforce training, and public health and wellness. So let me touch on those a little bit. I'm sure that there will be questions after this, and I'm more than happy to do my best to answer those. For us at the OREC office, economic development is more than just business growth, right? It's acting with intent and with an understanding of the impact that outdoor recreation activities have on our outdoor spaces and the people around us. On the conservation and stewardship side, state-supported conservation efforts are necessary to mitigate the economic and social impact of outdoor recreation activities, building off of also the need for economic development and diversification, especially in rural parts of the state. So we work with companies and we work with industry stakeholders to support efforts that conserve public lands and waters and steward climate resiliency. We also work with our higher education partners, our institutions throughout the state, and our network at the Department of Education. We work with them to support the next generation of outdoor leaders, and we work to establish opportunities for lifelong learning, and we incentivize programming that creates and retain an innovative workforce. And then collectively, our efforts also strive to better kind of define that intersection of public health and outdoor recreation. I think it's something that we collectively on this call all understand, but we have this goal of cultivating healthy outdoor lifestyles at home and at work, and certainly while at play. Improving workplace health, improving individual health is one of our top priorities at the Outdoor Rec Office. So, excuse me, in order to accomplish all of these goals, we have a lot of work to do, but we do that mostly through partnerships. And Friends of the Yampa, I think, is a great example. We convene various partnerships to ensure that outdoor recreation industry works for all of Colorado. And so we've seen this tremendous growth in the outdoor rec economy, but that growth has primarily been along the Front Range and the Denver Metro Corridor, the I-70 corridors. Rural parts of the state have largely been left behind. And so across the state, we're forming these regional partnerships or sort of geographic coalitions that bring together individuals and organizations like the Friends of the Yampa that have sort of these diverse outdoor rec interests, but share this mission, this commitment to supporting and growing the industry and bolstering our local communities. Excuse me. So our regional partnerships operate across the full spectrum of kind of organizational structures. Some are well-established 501c3 organizations. Others are ad hoc groups that are just sort of now coming together to prioritize ways of diversifying their economic structures through outdoor recreation. Partnerships for us are also really important at the national scale, and it's one of the assets that I think we can bring back to the state and perhaps back to these very specific regional areas. We were talking briefly about these earlier on the call tonight. So on the national scale, one of our partnerships is with other states that have really well-established offices of outdoor recreation. And so there are currently 13 states that are bound by a document called the Confluence Accords that we crafted here in Colorado. And those accords bind each of these other states and their outdoor rec offices to being champions of those 4 same impact areas. So economic development, conservation stewardship, public health and wellness, and workforce training. We have this other national partnership with the National Governors Association, and that is so that we can serve as a resource and we can network with other states that are interested in exploring opportunities to diversify their economies and to be champions of the outdoor recreation on a national scale. So these states, we work with them to explore, establishing task forces, establishing a policy advisor position in the executive branch within the governor's office, or to stand up an office and authorize it in statute and in state budget in Department of Natural Resources or in the Economic Development Office, so that these resources that we are all collectively tapping into at the federal level can be distributed to the state for the purposes of advancing conservation and stewardship and economic growth in rural parts of our states. So I think that's a sufficient overview, and I realize that I only have a couple minutes left. So I just want to say that collaboration is such an important pathway to shaping the future of Colorado. And it has been a valuable skill in my work at the state, and certainly has been sort of central to my work over the past 20 years in the nonprofit sector. And so now I have to tell my story, which is tough, so bear with me. Like Lindsay said, I spent the last 12 years before I joined the state at the National River Conservation Group, American Whitewater. And I was hired by that group in 2007 to stand up a program here in the Southern Rockies to help us, to help the river community advance the conservation, safe practices, river safety, and good public policy. And we were formed initially because there was this sense of urgency around the state water plan coming out of the 2005 Colorado Water for the 21st Century Act. So we created a program with minimal staff and minimal funding. And 12 years later, we have a staff of 5 people in Colorado. I still say we. AW has a staff of 5 people in Colorado with policy advisors and consultants under contract. We've had incredible success, I think, as an organization at AW, and that would include, federal policy initiatives, passing, under this administration, passing large omnibus land packages that protect places like the San Rafael Swell, protect Muddy Creek, create new wilderness areas in Utah and Colorado and across the Intermountain West. I came into this role probably in a very non-traditional path. And I would say it started certainly with my connections in the Yampa River as a young kid, but probably more importantly, as a student at the Dawson School on the Front Range of Colorado in learning how to paddle, in learning how to race canoes, and under the leadership and coaching of folks like Nate Lord, I had an opportunity to travel Colorado and New Mexico and develop connections with these rivers and connections with communities that see the value of having healthy places to recreate and see the opportunity that protected places have for economic diversification and development. As a paddler, I learned hard skills that allow me to navigate rivers and run waterfalls and do all the things that we enjoy. And I took those hard skills and eventually became a guide and an educator and an instructor. But after several years of doing that, I quickly realized that I was no longer passing on those hard skills. I spent most of my time answering really silly questions. At the time, I thought they were silly. It's like, why is there a fence across the river? Why is the river orange? What does that smell? These are questions that I would field from my clients on the raft or on the canoe or in a kayaking class. And I realized that I wasn't teaching hard skills anymore. I was teaching my clients to be advocates for these places. And at that point, I was no longer a guide. I became a river advocate. And about 20 years ago, I started working with watershed groups in Western Colorado and specifically Southwestern Colorado to implement plans to restore impacted areas and to improve water quality, to increase river access, to find opportunities to engage communities to the river that really flows at their heart. And so whether it was in the San Miguel or if it was in the Uncompahgre River system or even more broadly across the Intermountain West, the role of advocates, I think, is strengthened because we've all had, those of us that are advocates, we have a clear connection to these places. And so the important point that I carry forward even in this role today is that we cannot protect what we do not know. And probably many of you have heard me say this before, but it puts particular emphasis on the value of groups like Friends of the Yampa that have really critical stewardship and educational programs built into the very essence of why you do what you do and how you grow your membership base and how you foster the next generation to become good stewards of the resource that flows right through the heart of your communities. I think that work is incredibly important. And I realize I'm not flipping through my slides, so bear with me. Advocacy, I realize I'm at the end of my time, so let me just wrap this up real quickly. I'll skip the rest of what I had planned to speak on. Advocacy, the advocacy work of groups like Friends of the Yampa is incredibly important, and it serves as a model for a number of other groups that I've interfaced with around the state. So I think to all of you, I want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. The Yampa River is one of those real gems in Colorado and certainly in the Intermountain West. And whether it's through creative industries like film, whether it's through educational initiatives or youth engagement or direct advocacy on the policy front, having that connection to the place out your back door is really important. And you are all in a very unique position to enjoy it, to learn to respect it, and then to become champions of its future and help to shape what that looks like. For me, it started on the Elk River as a young kid with my dad and my grandfather, learning how to fly fish and learning how to read water. And I took that skill set into becoming a paddler and becoming an advocate myself. And what I would encourage everyone on this call is find strange allies in this industry. In the conservation community, we tend to operate in silos, and we really enjoy sharing successes, but not necessarily lean into the challenges. And I think Friends of the Yampa is an exception to this rule, but typically conservation groups that I have worked with find allies more than they seek out challenges, and groups that may not necessarily support their core mission. But that's where the hardest work occurs. That's where the most important work occurs. And so so I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. I commit the Outdoor Rec Office to being a champion and a supporter of Friends of the Yampa, and I hope that we have more opportunities in the future to do good work on the ground for a river that means a lot to all of us. And Lindsay, I apologize for taking so much time, but I will wrap it up there.
Thank you, Nathan. So now we're going to enter into our Q&A, and any ones we can't address within the time, we'll hang out and address at the end of the State of the Yampa. So address. So I have one for Nathan, and then we'll go on to what the question and answers are. It says, we know your department is about promoting the outdoor businesses and helping them get people out on rivers and recreating in Colorado. We have seen an increase in use on the Yampa. What is your department doing to manage these outdoor areas that may be overused, and how we as river advocates can help? I heard what you said at the end for our advocacy, but if you have any specific business plan related to that.
Well, I mean, I think that's a valuable question, and probably even more important now that we see more use of our public spaces in our outdoor areas. The use that we've seen of public lands during COVID-19 and our stay-at-home orders has been just overwhelming. So what do we do to address that? We have a couple of new partnerships with groups like Leave No Trace and the tourism office, and our federal land managers and our state land managers, our recreation advocates. And what we are scrambling to put together right now is a very important campaign to teach both residents and visitors how to subscribe by the rules and take care of these places, right? Leave no trace ethics. The other really important piece, and I hope that there's a role for Friends of the Yampa in this going forward, is we're working on an effort with the Colorado Outdoor Partnership and Colorado Parks and Wildlife to build a bigger network of regional coalitions around the state that will follow this framework of developing a statewide conservation plan. And I know almost everybody on this call is aware that the statewide water plan was very, grassroots, grass tops driven. We want to do something very similar, but terrestrial based. And a lot of that is identifying hotspots. Where is there overuse? Where is the impact from our industry the biggest? And what can we do to mitigate the impacts that continued enjoyment of the outdoors is having on wildlife corridors, on riparian health, on agricultural heritage? So what I would say, the easy answer is, we're convening really important conversations. That's the role of this office. But the important decisions and how we shape the future of Colorado will be driven by groups like yours that are on the ground, have your ear to the resource and to your community, and understand where there is conflict and where there is opportunity, and then bringing that feedback into a planning process.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Ben Bell. It says, how can Friends of the Yampa, our partners in Moffat County and ORIC, work together, or ORIC, work together to help the city of Craig to enhance the river reach through town so that the Yampa can be celebrated and valued a a greater degree? Is there funding available to help with this effort, i.e. recreation, diversion, structures, trails along the river?
Yeah, that's a priority and certainly something that I absolutely support because it's sort of carryover from my time at American Whitewater. So there's a couple ways that I would say there is a strategy developing, Ben, going forward. One is, talking with Tom in Moffat County at the tourism office, talking with folks in Steamboat Springs about creating a regional partnership in the Yampa River Valley. And with a regional partnership structure in place, there is some funding available to help with the strategic framework for how to accomplish that sort of economic diversification and build on those opportunities in the city of Craig and in Moffat County more broadly. That's the bigger picture sort of strategic work that this office is very much interested in investing in. That said, I will also comment that we have new resources that were just signed by the governor this week, the resources in the form of funding to go to tourism and outdoor recreation infrastructure enhancements. And we have a particular eye to make sure that those resources are being deployed to more rural parts of the state. The Yampa is a high priority for me, as you well know. And so we're doing everything we can to make sure that Tom Kleinschnitz, Moffat County, the network that we have been working with in the Yampa Valley can access some of that fund. And we want to be supportive in helping the applicants for assistance navigate that process with the Economic Development Commission, with CHAFA, and with the governor's policy team. So I think the general answer is yes. And as we develop those resources and make them more accessible and the application becomes open, I will be reaching out to Friends of the Yampa to make sure that opportunities like Craig enhancements are at the top of the list.
That's great. Thank you so much. So we do have one more question, but we'll have to push that to the end so we can move on. I am happy to introduce Cody Perry. Cody Perry is coming to us from Rig to Flip Productions and is currently on the Friends of the Yampa Board of Directors. He was a resident of the Yampa Valley until he moved to Grand Junction to work with the National Parks Conservation Association. In my short time of getting to know him, I have discovered his passion for rivers and is one of the biggest river advocates I've ever met. Cody is the definition of a river advocate. He co-founded his film company to enhance our awareness of rivers and advocate for them. So not just what he does on his personal time, but what he does as a business is to advocate. Cody produced and created the following 2 films, and I'm proud to have him here for this year's State of the Yampa address. Welcome, Cody. You may have to turn your video on.
Hey, everybody. Lindsay, thanks so much for bringing me on and putting all this together. Thank you, everybody, for attending and putting all this together so we can get together and look at some films and talk about rivers. All right, I'm gonna start my video, Lindsay. Okay, good. Hey, how's everybody doing? This is my office. There's a bed in my office, yeah. And I did just have a dog in here, which I found to be very helpful during these video sessions. You know, like Nathan so eloquently said, finding allies out there in the conservation landscape around rivers, around public lands, and in communities is something we should strive for, and something I've been so lucky to enjoy getting into filmmaking, specifically conservation filmmaking, because stories are something that is accessible. It lays the groundwork for people to have some relativity towards each other, some understanding and developing and growing that common space. That's how I've met Nathan. That's how I've met many people across the Western Slope. And for me, myself, I was born into a ranching family. We raised Anderson Angus in southern Arizona, way down in the Gila River Basin, and did that for a long time. Moved up to Colorado, where I think fit into the very stereotypical Colorado young high school dude, and all I wanted to do was move to a mountain town, and by my lucky stars, found my way to Steamboat and the Yampa River. That was a formative choice and a formative experience overall in my life, because it did lead me to becoming an advocate, to becoming a lover of rivers and a lover of adventure, and understanding the great wealth of being land rich in the American West. And then by that experience, coming to understand the responsibility that comes with it. I was taught that by many people, including Herm Hoops. Herm Hoops, if you have been a river runner, chances are you've heard of this guy, Herm Hoops. You know, and that's either by you getting onto his email list somehow, or you've seen his name enshrined in the very river maps that we all buy. He's a keeper of stories and history about places. He spent time as an educator on the East Coast, and he moved into the Park Service eventually, with intentions always to move west from early explorations in Vermont. And when he finally did, that also changed the course of his life. He's worked as an MPS administrator in Denver. He moved to Dinosaur to become an interpretive ranger, where he launched into a long and dedicated time spent on the rivers, in particular the Green and Yampa rivers. Dinosaur and Desolation Canyon are two landscapes that he knows a thing or two about. And when I was visiting Herm recently, one year, borrowing gear from him, we were sitting in his garage, and you got to picture this garage. It's covered in memorabilia from a guy who spent his life running rivers and his life getting into the minutia of the American West. And when we were sitting there, Herm told me he had been diagnosed with cancer. And that definitely brings in a lot of perspective and pause as we looked out his garage toward the Green River. And we decided to set out and make a film about the hero's journey, about all of our journey, in a way, of where we find ourselves and our identity in the very landscapes around us. We grow to love them, and we want to pass them down in generations. Herm Hoop's story of finding that love and channeling that passion into advocating for the lands you cared so much about is why we set out to make this film, Salad Days. And Herm Hoops is who I'm here also to introduce right now. Is, if that's correct, is that not, Lindsay? And Herm Hoops will take it from here, correct?
Well, first let's show Salad Days. That would be ideal.
Let's show the Salad Days. Okay, so because the quality is somewhat degraded, we won't show it through Zoom. I'm going to post the link to watch Salad Days right here in the chat box for everybody to see. So I'll get this set up, all the panelists and attendees here, and just copy paste my link just to make sure we're set.
So yeah, how we're gonna do this is, because we found that video doesn't stream very well through Zoom, we'd rather share it and you get the full experience, the quality experience. So go to the link that Cody shares. We're gonna give you guys 15 minutes and then come back on here. Keep Zoom open and then we can call you back. Thanks everyone.
Yeah.
See you in a
Thanks
bit.
everybody, yeah. Big thanks to the project sponsors, American Whitewater, NRS, Jack's Plastic Welding, and others, many others who were, it was a crowd-funded project. This was very grassroots. This was a passion project for us. Thank you, Herm and Valerie Hoops, for inviting us into so closely into your lives. It was an amazing experience that we'll never forget. Here's the link. Okay.
It sounds like some people are starting to finish the video, but we're going to wait a couple minutes and then get started with Herm.
I thought we were going to start with Cody.
Go from there. Hey, Hoops, I'll introduce you here in just another minute or two, and
Okay.
then we'll start off and go from there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Just like we did in Durango, eh?
Yeah, I'll give you a cue to jump on in.
Okay.
Let's just do the next 7:02 and then people will start to join.
Got it. All right, it's time. Hopefully all of you have made it back. I love watching that film again just now, Herm. That was a great trip. I gotta say, right before we left, there was snow flying in the air. And understand, I mean, we're going down a 90-mile stretch of the Green River that has just a couple of prime opportunities for, if an emergency were to occur or if the oxygen wouldn't last us, whatever it was, we just had a couple of chances for a quick and timely way to address those concerns. So it had like all these layers and the snow's flying, but as soon as we got down there, it was great. And want to pass it off to Herm. We're short for time, but there again, looking at what we set out to do and looking at Deso and everything that's happened there was really timely. The Wild and Scenic Rivers Act had gone to pass and incorporate Desolation Canyon into the system. Herm was part of that. Nathan was part of that. It was a really broad and really well thought out long-term effort. And Herm, I want to just go ahead and pass it off to you. Thank you. Welcome here. We're really glad to have you.
Well, all right. If you hear some noise, we're having a pretty violent thunderstorm right now outside. But I do have to say it was a lot of fun going down with Cody and Ben, and I really enjoyed it. I felt like I spent 2 years at my own funeral wake with Cody. The first time I went down the Yampa was around 1972, and there were an awful lot of things that you wouldn't recognize. There were only 2 other groups on the river, a Hatch River trip and the Arvada High School group that went down every year. And down where the Yampa meets the Green, the main channel was up against that ledge over on the right-hand side. We used to fish for catfish off of that ledge. But Echo Park grabbed my heart pretty much the day I saw it, the evening I saw it in the sunset. But it took me a couple years under the guidance of some old timers to understand that I had a bigger responsibility than just taking a lot of pictures and bragging about what I did. And that's probably one of the hardest things to get people to understand, especially these days. In fact, I honestly feel with my experience that if the Echo Park Dam were to come up today, the environmental and conservation movements are so fractured with different goals for different things, but I suspect the dam would be built. And the question is, you know, how do you prepare for protecting the Yampa River? And I think Nate said that you needed to find allies. Well, I'd like to expand on that, because really what you need to do is make allies. When David Brower began fighting the Echo Park Dam, the first group that he got to go on record opposing the dam was the Carbon County Development Committee. And how did he do that? He convinced them that hydropower was a threat to coal. And you know, this is like a holy war, and you have to be able to choose partners that you can educate to assist you in a sense.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Herm. It's like it's definitely like it's a challenging landscape, and in the amount of time we have with this too, I also would you mention your unique research on inflatable boats and how that lent itself to the conservation community and how that had a place in it, and your unique research with the different companies of inflatable craft?
Oh yeah, I'll do that pretty much at the end. In a sense, tonight, you know, we're preaching to the choir, and I asked friends of the Yampa River, have you reached out to people who you might not consider as allies to make them allies? I've been working with the fish squeezers of the state of Utah and federal government, and our local state representative, Scott Chu, to try to get ranchers involved in aquaculture, flooding fields to raise the fish larvae. And if they can get a little money at it and they become educated about what's going on, some of them may become people who will help us out in certain times. And that's what you have to do. And there comes time when you have to stand up and say, well, you know, party's over and we separate. But what Cody was asking about the historical research, I knew a long time ago that when river runners were talking about rubber fabricators and rubber crafters, they really didn't know what they were talking about. And because I picked my boat up in Richwood, West Virginia at the rubber fab plant, I knew the people. So I went back there and I began developing a history of the different boat manufacturers that I give out for free, electronically for free. I've got every boat manufacturer done, every major boat manufacturer done, except Sotar, which is an interesting one to do. And I've got about 20 minor companies from Belgium, South Africa, Australia, to finish off. But that's been a major project of mine for the last 20 years. And I use the proceeds from my boat repair company with a little support from the University of Utah. And the university has been keeping all this documentation in the J. Willard Marriott Library. So it'll be available to anybody in the future, including audio recordings of people. And early on, I realized, oh man, you know, this is really important stuff to get, because the people who know were starting to die off. Dee Holiday was a dealer for Calgary, and he passed away, and a number of the old timers were just starting to get dementia, even Bill Parks with NRS. So that's pretty much what I was doing. Is that where you wanted to go with that, Cody?
Yeah, because I think it's important for for what you've seen, you've been present over this arc of recreation's growth. Like, we're talking about recreation's importance, and it's important, and it's projected growth on public lands. And for you seeing that, and you have experiences with like regulations like groovers, for instance, being used. I mean, can you talk about the balance of, of recreation and stewardship, and that whole arc?
Yeah, when you talk about freedom, when I started out, it was freedom. It was unbelievable freedom. And of course, we didn't do everything correctly because most of us just didn't understand that, you pour your bacon grease onto the sand and it affects the people who are coming after you, or, you bury your human waste. And and as a person who worked for the National Park Service, frankly, I loathed regulations, especially regulations that were dull, repetitive, stupid, and boring. And I found that there were a number of regulations and fees that I didn't consider appropriate. And one of the early experiences I had was related to human waste carryout when they first instituted it, Desolation Canyon, around, early in the 1980s, I believe it was. And I was doing a number of trips down there every year just because it was easy for me. And it was kind of fun. It was still free and open. And I wasn't about to carry my human waste out. I mean, there were hundreds of head of beef cattle standing in the river at Minimod, and Vernal was dumping secondary treated sewage into the Ashley Creek, and Maybell was dumping raw sewage into the Yampa, and you want me to carry my human waste out? But I went and bought a really cheap system. The ranger checked me out. I put the system back in my car, and I took off. Well, later that year, I think it was in September, I launched out of Sandwash late afternoon, and I got down below Rock House, and there used to be a big sandy beach there. I pulled up on that sandy beach just about dark, and I just laid my sleeping bag out in the sand. And when I woke up in the morning, my sleeping bag was covered with human feces and toilet paper blooms. And I was quick to realize that the problem wasn't Maybell, Colorado, and it wasn't Hereford cows at Minimod, and it wasn't Vernal, Utah, it was me. And when you discover something like that, you become a real advocate for it. And that's kind of the way I became. I didn't ask, when I started out, I didn't ask for awards and recognition or anything like that. These old timers told me that I had a responsibility, that I owed something back. And it took me a while to generate that into, like, Jesus, nobody else is doing it. And look what's happening. I mean, we only covered part of it in the film. What I said was, when I first started coming out here, the West was so wide and open and free. What could the threat possibly be compared to working on, things like Save the James Bay or cleaning up the Lamoille River in Vermont? It just seemed impossible there could be any threat. So it was a combination of me discovering what the threats were. And when I discovered Echo Park and what people had given up for me so that I could run down the river, that was an important stepping stone, because I had kids and I wanted them to be able to at least have a little bit of a taste of what I had. My fear is with the multiplication and increasing of fees that we're driving a whole sector of people out of the river. And a lot of those people have the opportunity to be real advocates for us. So that's pretty much all I have to say, unless, you want to run me out of town, or I do have a question for Nate. I was wondering if that was a bottle of whiskey behind you on your shelf on the right side.
I don't know, buddy. Let's take a look. Herm, I have so much admiration and respect for you, and your last point resonates with me. And obviously we have issues in Colorado right now around increasing barriers to access, and especially access to river recreation. And I so appreciate that you've been a champion of breaking down those barriers, and you have been for most of your career, either whether it's through education or influencing policy or just pushing back on the regulators. And I want to acknowledge that, and I have so much respect for your position on those issues. And I'm going to go find a bottle of whiskey just because I feel like it should exist behind.
I have to tell you that I really appreciate it was like the good guy, bad guy on the Twisher diversion. And you were the good guy. You did an amazing job. And I want you to know I appreciate that an awful lot. You can now run from Flaming Gorge all the way to Hay. Yeah.
High five, buddy. Yeah, we've done some good things. The Green River is now ready to run from source to, reservoir without any dams that we have to portage. And you look at the National Conservation Area just south of you, and wild and scenic designation on the Green River, which I didn't think we'd ever see in this administration, but we got it done.
Yep.
So, thanks for all your support and being a champion.
You were the one who got the money to get it engineered, and Brody Young was the one who got the money from the state of Utah to get it built. So.
Yeah, but it takes people like you that know the river and know the resource to make it personable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, folks. What I knew was that there was a U.S. federal court decision in 1984 that declared the Green River a navigable waterway from Swayze's Rapid to the confluence of the Colorado. And that was a key in the whole deal, because you can't obstruct traffic on a commercially designated river.
We gotta move on.
Okay.
And for all of you that most of you probably know, but these guys are talking about a diversion structure that was on the main stem of the Green River that you could travel, from Steamboat Springs all the way down to Antelope Hills down there by Glen Canyon Dam, unobstructed in a boat. And both these guys were played instrumental roles in working with a lot of different voices to find a middle ground and bring some stuff together. So bravo, you guys, for that, and for everything, Herm, Nathan. And we're gonna move on to the introduction of Rica. Before that though, real quick, I did want to read I gathered a bunch of quotes about Herm from some friends, and one friend in particular named Lauren Wood, who manages Holiday River Expeditions, wrote about Herm that a friend once told me, sometimes we see a wall in front of us, impossible to get through. But if we're bold enough to push against it, sometimes we find it's only a curtain. Herm is that person, ever willing to push through and keep pushing, finding the cracks in the walls that keep us from each other and from the natural world and from our connection to wildness. What would the world be without Herm Hoops? So thanks, Herm. You the man. Okay.
I didn't know. So far, I guess.
So yeah, I wanna bring in Rica. Rica is a story about the Little Snake River, and an amazing resource and a major tributary of the Yampa. My attention was brought up there by a proposed dam project that was part of a Wyoming initiative to develop their share of the upper Colorado River Basin Compact. And this river, this tributary, you know, had some troubling kind of fiscal issues, legal issues, environmental questions. It just seemed really suspect. And the more I dialed in on this, I started to meet other people who were also involved. And one of those people was Rica Fulton. And on the Little Snake, we grew to know each other, and we actually developed quite a relationship now. She's my partner. We live together here in Grand Junction, but we also share our connection with each other, finding each other on this river. You know, we were working back channels about this dam project, seeing who the landowners were, because there was a lot of things stated in it. And through the process of looking and examining and performing an analysis on this dam, we came to also learn that there was a tremendous amount of really cutting edge science occurring on the river. Utah State University, in conjunction with many other scientists, USGS and others, you know, the Little Snake supplies a significant amount of sediment to the Green River, and therefore understanding how this system has changed in the past, the Little Snake, and the Yampa for that matter, and how that might change in the future, it's important, you know, to understanding the management implications today, in particular the ongoing recovery efforts of endangered fish. It all comes down to this Little Snake River that puts in a tremendous amount of sediment. So we found this story in rafting this river that no one goes to. All this science is occurring on it that turns out to be really important today to hundreds of miles of the riverine environment below Flaming Gorge Dam. It's this tremendous recreational resource that no one goes to. It's abundant in solitude, and it brings up this huge experience, brought up a lot of questions and a lot of intrigue, and we made this film Rio Rica about that. So we're going to do the same, kind of post a link here in this comment. I'm going to go ahead and get this link copied. We're going to paste it here. This is about the same time frame as Salad Days. It's just about 13 minutes, 13 and a half minutes. Paste the link here, and we'll all go watch it.
Yeah, we'll convene here in 14 minutes for some Q&A and discussion time for all that stay. Great. And we understand if you watch this video and have to peace out. So thank you everyone for coming, and I look forward to the discussion afterwards. Enjoy. People are gonna start to be coming back now. We'll wait a couple minutes and then get going with any questions and that you guys would like to ask, as well as discussion. If you want to raise your hand, you're free to talk out loud. We can make your voice heard. I'll give you a verbal warning before I do that. So thanks, everyone. So Cody, did you want to talk any more about these films before we move on?
I think we can move on.
Okay, great. We had someone raise their hand. Let's see if they're still here. It looks like they left. So we aren't able to elevate. If anyone would like to talk, please raise your hand as well. And we do have one open question. It's from Jill Tipton, and it says, oh, well, her answer went away. Actually, or her question actually just went away. Here it goes. It said, what do you think a few ways for each individual as river runners to become advocates with river watersheds in Colorado? And we did type a text answer to it. Nathan and Cody answered it. And it pretty much, in summary, if you guys want to check out the Q&A box, in summary, it's to get with your local watershed group, your grassroots organization, and join them, be a part of the process, be a part of the planning process, learn about the river you're floating, and make sure you're tracking any current changes or policy that can impact that river. Volunteering is always a good help. And there's many events that you can do that. Being involved in the planning process. So the Yampa Basin has a roundtable for the Yampa White Green. And that is something where a lot is done in regards to this river, in regards to planning. And it also gives you the opportunity to meet the people in water and to see what's being done behind the scenes. So it's all public, it's publicly funded mostly. And so anyone's welcome to join. So that's how you can be an advocate, getting involved in small and big picture and your local nonprofits and organizations. So does anyone else like to ask anything? Or, oh, we have a hand. Let's see here. Patrick Tierney, I'm gonna allow you to talk right now. Patrick, can you hear us? And can you talk?
First of all, thanks for a great webinar. It was so great to see Cody and Herm and Kent and all the people that are working so hard, and you, Lindsay, to protect rivers in the area. I had a question for Nathan. Is he still here? I think so. Nathan, I want to ask you, what is the most important things, most important projects that you see you and your office being involved with in the next couple of years?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think the best answer that I can offer right now is that my crystal ball is pretty cloudy. You know, we have a $3+ billion budget shortfall in Colorado, especially for state agencies. And that really impacted the quality of work and the kind of programming that the Outdoor Rec Office can push for this next fiscal year. I think generally the biggest objective that we have is investing in rural parts of the state. And I think, you know, the two examples that I hold up are probably pretty close to where your passions lie. And one would be the Yampa River Basin, and the other one is the Dolores and San Miguel River Basin, both two regions that are now having to transition away from sort of singular extractive focused economies and are now sort of enthusiastic about embracing outdoor recreation as a way of diversifying their structures. And so with the limited resources that we have during this economic crisis, we will be directing some of those resources to communities that are looking to diversify. And if that means we can elevate things like the Whitewater Park and a new mountain bike trail system in and around the city of Craig, and the same for Nucla and Natarita and the Dove Creek area, and see that those communities start to embrace new visitation from residents outside the region and certainly outside the state, I think those will be sufficient wins given the kind of limitations that we're working with.
Any other one like to ask a question? Raise your hand. No more questions. Awesome. Does our panelists would you guys like to add anything?
Hey, Lindsay, I have a question for Cody. Yeah. Hey, Cody, what's the status on that dam project on the Little Snake? And also, if that project were to be built, would it have significant impact to the sediment transport on the Little Snake in general, in your opinion?
Yeah, it'd likely have little to no impact overall on the sediment, but it will contribute to a trend of diminishing discharge, which we don't, I think the question is like, we don't really know how it overall will impact. And we have to see some concrete plans about what the dam looks like. It's going to be around 10,000 acre feet, and we don't know if it'll have a refill like Elkhead Reservoir does, where they could fill it up once and then fill it up again. None of that stuff's on paper, and they haven't demonstrated to the Army Corps of Engineers that there's a purpose and need. And so there's some environmental concerns with it too, because they'd be drowning an old copper mine that's like a candidate for a Superfund site. And there's one of the most significant populations of Colorado River cutthroat trout are in the upper reaches of what this dam would inundate, one of the last like genetically pure populations of this threatened or sensitive fish species. So yeah, I mean, like, it wouldn't have much impact because the Little Snake flows around 500,000 acre feet annually, somewhere in there. It's comparable to the Dolores. It's a big river. But the question really is sediment from the Little Snake goes to the Yampa. The Yampa immediately, as we all know, goes to the Green, which is coming out of Flaming Gorge Dam, and is sediment starved. So the two together, the point of the whole film is like the Little Snake and Yampa are providing naturalness for a large portion of the upper Colorado River basin. And therefore, we should be extremely careful about how we develop that resource for ag use, whatever it is, for reservoirs. And that just goes broadly, I think, for the Yampa River basin. So
Cody, it is a big river, but boy, when it drops, it can drop pretty quickly. My fear is that the waters of the Colorado River are going to die by 1,000 cuts like this small dam, and 50 CFS here and 80 CFS there. Nuclear power plant in Green River, taking water out of another drainage legally, but the water is really coming out of the Green River. There's just no end to it. You have Wyoming and Colorado especially, but Utah also, wanting to protect their reserve water rights. And a lot of people are just turning on irrigation just to use their water rights so that they don't lose them. I think part of the answer is somehow overturning the 1872 Mining Act and the law of beneficial use. And Colorado's done a great job, Nate, with reserving water for recreation and wildlife. They've been a real leader. And one of the things that happened with the Tusher Dam, what is there, a couple hundred CFS that's actually reserved for recreational river running. At first I didn't think that, but now I've kind of talked with Fish and Wildlife Service, Tilden, and that water is by a mutual agreement reserved.
Have a verbal question from Charlie Preston Townsend. Charlie, ready to talk? Here we go. We got you on now.
Hey everybody, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So in regards to sediment load, I had this thought while swirling my way down Cross Mountain at CrossFest last weekend. When calculating water volume, we use CFS, as everybody knows. How do we calculate how much sediment is in that water, and does that skew our calculations of how much water is being delivered if we're not accurately calculating for how much sediment that water is carrying?
I believe Tamara Nauman here is on. Yep, I still see her here, and I would love to ask her if she has a grasp on Topping's methodology, who's a USGS geoscience guy and working with Utah. Yep, here she is. Great. I'm going to be quiet now.
Tamara, I just muted you, so you can talk. If you can. It might not work because she wasn't really expecting it, so we might have to address that question later.
Well, I maybe we'll get her patched in, but like I believe that there's various gauges, and I think there's an acoustic method where they can kind of do basically look at the amount of dissolved solids and all these other particle matters that are being carried, and look at those numbers from different gauges, and then adjust to how much is basically like an account, how much is coming in, how much is showing up here. And you do this math all over the basin, like Maybell gauge, Lily Park gauge, Jensen gauge. And yeah, I think that's the best I can do. I do have the papers. I would be happy to forward them to you.
Great. Well, anything else we'd like to add before we give the bye?
Bye.
No. Okay, here we go. We have a question. So actually, Tamara actually gave an answer to Charlie's question. She says, this is very complicated. Dr. David Topping at GCMRC is doing very important science on the sediment transport of little snake, maybe a topic for future seminars. And then we have a comment from Jill Timpton. It says the USGS used to collect sediment and measure it at specific gauge stations. It was measured in ppm, I think, when I worked at Water Sediment Lab at SLC in 1978. So a little more insight from our audience.
I found a quote here too, real quick, that from Christy Leonard, who was featured in the film and is part of Jack Schmidt's outfit, is their overall objective is to understand how much sediment and erosion accumulation is necessary to cause fundamental change in the channel's form and behavior. They chose the Little Snake as one of the field sites for a few reasons, because it supplies significant sediment to the Green River, and understanding how it has changed in the past, might change in the future, is important to management implications. They do this by measuring sediment transport at Maybell, Lily Park, Deer Lodge gauges to calculate how much sediment is accumulated or evacuated, and intervening reaches and how between those gauges. And there's a link here that I'll post. Okay, the link's not working, never mind.
We will have this recorded and we'll be sharing it on our website, including some of the videos you got to see today, if you ever want to refer. But we can also, if you have any questions, please email me, info@friendsoftheyampa.com, and I can make sure we can answer you further. Tamara made a comment as well that says, if people want to engage, they can support this science through FOTY, which is us, and the roundtable. And this is definitely conversations that do come up. Oh, so Jackie Brown asked Cody, what channel on Vimeo is Rica? Trying to watch on my TV app and I can't find it. We can answer that probably with a call. Thanks, Jackie. Well, great. Thank you, everyone. And I'm so happy to have everyone here. Thanks for all the joiners. And thanks for the people that stuck around. Any last words from our panelists? Otherwise, we will call it a night. No? Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great night and enjoy that river before it gets too low. Bye.
Bye, Herm. Bye, Cody. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Nathan, Lindsay, Herm, Kent, everybody.
Yeah, bye to y'all.
Thank
So
you.
long, folks. Thank you.